Good afternoon. Welcome to the Pipeliners Association August meeting. This is Paul Pradell, Chairman of the Website Committee. Just wanted to give everybody a quick orientation before we turn it over to Gary, our President. All attendees are muted. Once we get to the question and answer portion of this session, you'll be able to put in questions into the question box. You should have a control panel up in your top right where you'll do that. And then volunteers in the background will take those questions and feed it over to our speaker. Just so you know, scholarship credit will be given for this meeting. The way we're going to do that is automatically based on the email address that we use to register for this event. People who attend the meeting, we will match their email address to their profile. If those two match, then scholarship credit will be given. We are a 100% volunteer organization, so please allow the membership committee about 2 weeks to get all that posted, and then you'll see that on our website. In addition, in a couple of days, the presentation that'll be given today will be posted to our website. And we are excited to say that for the first time, we are recording a meeting. So we will record this, and then within the next couple of weeks, we'll get that posted to YouTube, and we'll send a message out to everybody when that's posted. So with that, I'll turn it over to Gary.
Thanks, Paul. Again, I'd like to welcome everyone to our first monthly meeting of the 2020-2021 year. A little bit different. Hope everyone's staying healthy, both physically and mentally during these unprecedented times. Although I'm not a veteran, I'm gonna lead us all in the Pledge of Allegiance before we get started, like we usually do. So if everybody would join me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I guess first order of business is our monthly meeting updates. I think everybody's aware, we talked about it in the spring, but if you're not, the Hess Club, where we've been meeting since I think the Pipeliner started, has gone out of business. Maybe a casualty of COVID, but not really sure about all the reasons. So we do not at this time yet have a new venue picked out for our monthly meetings. We've been evaluating several different of those. Thanks to Alex McConnell, our treasurer this year, for doing all the hard work and the grunt work for looking at those venues. This meeting right now is virtual. We also plan to have our October 5th meeting virtual and online. We are going to target our first face-to-face in-person meeting in a while for the first Monday in November, which is November 2nd. And as I mentioned, we looked at several different venues. We've narrowed it down to 2 that we'd like to try out. The first one being the Norris Center at the City Center, which we'll try out on November 2nd. We've got a speaker lined up for that. Of course, they have COVID restrictions in place also, and hopefully nothing changes that's going to impact that. But we are targeting to do that meeting in person November 2nd. At the Norris Center at City Center. So stay tuned, there'll be some announcements. We want to try and roll out registration a little bit earlier than usual so we can get a good idea how many people will attend. Then our December meeting, we're going to try and have that down at the Ballroom in downtown, which is near the Wortham Center. And again, those are the 2 venues we've kind of talked about as officers and with the board and narrowed it down, and like to try out those places November and December and see how they work out, and then pick out one of those places to sign a contract with for next year. So really that's it for monthly meeting updates. Most of you should be aware, if you're a member, that you got an email recently. We did finally go live with our PTEX training online course. There's instructions with that, so just want to remind you that that is out there and available. to members only, free of charge. The first module is pipeline design, and we'll see how that goes and look for some of your feedback to see what you think of that if we move into the next course. Then I'd like to make some announcements for the events and the committees. You know, typically I'd ask everybody to stand up and give their own report, a little bit different here with Zoom or whatever we're doing this on. So I'm going to go through them real quick and try and get into the presentation as soon as we can. So on some good news, I am happy to announce for the scholarship committee that we had a record year. We awarded 152 students got scholarships this year, totaling about $850,000, which is a record, both for the number of students and the dollar amount. Just a reminder that everybody must be a member in good standing for 2 years, 2 consecutive years, and must attend 6 events in the prior calendar year to be eligible to be a sponsor for a scholarship candidate. On our fish out, the 2020 fish out, I'm also proud to announce that was a great success. We made more money than we ever did this year, even despite COVID and everything. So again, like to give thanks to all the volunteers, sponsors, and participants. And the same goes for the scholarship committee, all the events we have. I mean, without the volunteers and the people that run these and all the sponsors, we just couldn't do what we do for these kids. The golf tournament, you should have seen that come out. I think it was last Monday, opened up for registration. It is being held September 28th at Kingwood. There is a modified format, tee times. I believe that is now sold out. Less people, obviously. We got tee times. Again, Kingwood is in Harris County, actually in the city of Houston, so there are some restrictions there that going to make it a little bit different, but we will have that event on September 28th at Kingwood. Next up is the clay shoot. We plan to have that as usual at Westside Shooting Grounds, Friday, October 16th, and registration should open this Thursday, September 3rd. So be looking for that to come out and open up, and looking for everybody to get signed up and have a good clay shoot this October. Veterans Committee, George and Jesse have done a good job. We got 56 hats distributed to veterans. There is still registration available online. If you are a veteran, you can get a veteran's hat. So remind you of that. You can go online. I think it's under the veterans tab and register to get a hat. PYP, they had an event in June that got canceled, obviously due to COVID. They are planning a bowling social fundraising event here in October. They'll share details with us, I'm sure, by the website as we get closer to the event. Todd and Graham and everybody from PYP want to remind everyone that there is a mentor program. We're looking to grow that. We need more mentors and mentees to do that. So just a reminder that that's out there. And if you're interested in being a mentor or you want to be mentored, contact Grady Harrison or Brandon Butts if you're interested or have any questions. And again, I want to thank PYP for the work they did since 2016 when they were formed and raising enough money. We used the money they raised through their programs and some of their events to actually pay for this first online PTEX training course. So looking for some support there. Website, I want to mention to everybody, we do have website sponsorships available. We got our first one this year, I think in June or July, and we could use some website sponsors. We want to put that money also towards our education program, online training. Membership, we're up to about 1,050 members right now. That includes about 20 new members. And just a reminder again that the dues are due right now for the next year, and that year extends through December of next year. As you remember, I think at our monthly meeting in June, we changed our bylaws, and now our fiscal year, which used to run from July through June, we made that coincide with a calendar year. And then I guess last but not least, from the Treasury, last I checked last week, we had about $430,000 in our checking account. and $100,000 in our savings account. So we're in good shape starting off the year. Other than that, we usually ask for other pipeline chapters to get up and present. I won't go through all that. Other than to mention, most of them appear that they are having their, events this fall. And we have links on our website to all those other pipeliner chapters that you could go and look and see what they're doing. So really, that's it. Right now, I'm going to hand it off to our current Vice President, Jim Hughes, to introduce today's speaker. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, thank you. And it's an honor to just welcome Wes Palmer with us today. He's a certified photogrammetrist, a certified LIDAR mapping scientist, as well as a certified GIS professional. Wes has a master's degree in geographic information science and a bachelor's degree in environmental studies from Florida State University. Wes also taught GIS, GPS, remote sensing, and UAV classes at Louisiana Tech University for 9 years. We were fortunate enough to hire him away at HGA, and we're glad to have him. Wes also, he loves the outdoors, which is another friend of mine. So he loves to fish, and obviously he loves his spending time with his family. And with that, Wes, we appreciate you being here with us today and look forward to the presentation. The stage is yours.
All right. Thank you very much, Jim, for the introduction. I'm Wesley Palmer. I'm the Geospatial Manager at HGA. And as I go along, if you have questions, just shoot them over into the chat box, and we can talk about them afterwards. Or I'll have my contact information up on the last slide if if you want to have additional questions or would like to know more. So what I'd like to talk about is using geospatial data and different types of tools to help support pipeline applications. And so there's sort of a variety of different approaches, and we'll talk about some of those. One of which is looking at data to aid in pipeline routing. So if we think about all the information that's out there, how can we use that to help drive a linear route? Another application would be using remotely sensed data, using remote sensing to supplement survey or to understand more about the area that our projects are in. And then we'll look at how do we leverage artificial intelligence to maybe support integrity management or pipeline operations. And then using online platforms to sort of communicate all that information effectively, efficiently, and so we can make decisions with it. And the image I have displayed there is an example of LIDAR data. Airborne LIDAR that was flown over an area, and then bathymetric data sort of fused together so that we have a continuous surface from the terrain and then down to the bottom of the river and then back up to the ground surface. And so that's an example of using geospatial data from multiple sources together to help us figure out what is that river crossing profile going to look like if we were going to bore into that river, for instance. So kind of an example. So in pipeline routing, understanding information, the more information we can have to understand the landscape will help us make better decisions. There's in the geospatial world, there's a wide variety of different data sources out there, whether it be parcel data from the Texas Railroad Commission or a third-party source, LIDAR data from the USGS, detailed wetland information from the National Wetlands Inventory. There's many different state and local databases that are out there that maintain their own data layers about geology or looking at population. There's pipeline data sets, so where are existing pipelines. And so there's a wide variety of data sets that are out there that describe the physical landscape. And we can use GIS, geospatial information. We can identify those sources and try to pull together the best picture of that topographic landscape and what are the obstacles that may be there that may impact the pipeline route. And so you'd be surprised, there's a lot more information that's available out there than about the landscape than you would think, and you can you can learn quite a bit about a route before that route gets developed. One piece of that is also acquiring updated aerial imagery to support, to basically validate the other information that you have and then develop new information. So we all know the landscape is very dynamic. Things change very frequently. And so getting an aerial imagery flight, at the very beginning of that project will help you understand what's currently there. There's different ways that we can acquire aerial imagery, of an area. So you can use satellite platforms. There's different vendors out there that you can download satellite information. Some of the smaller sensors are collecting that information on a daily basis. You can utilize manned aircraft, so whether it be a helicopter or an airplane that's able to go and fly your specific area. There's unmanned aerial vehicles or UAVs or drones that you can use and go out and collect that imagery. All these are valid tools for different types of projects and sort of understanding the different resolutions that come with those and what your goals are. But you can tap into these sources to better understand what's on the ground. I get this question a lot, and so just to kind of provide a side note there, on the, I operate unmanned aerial vehicles. We also utilize manned aircraft in our work, and to me, it's about the data, right? I just need good data to make decisions with, and the tool that I'm using to collect that information, isn't quite as important. But when it comes to logistics and resolution and cost, that's where that distinction is made on a project basis. With the current limitations of unmanned aerial vehicles, some UAVs have the capability, to fly 20 miles away and fly 20 miles back. And so you could do that, you could perform an aerial survey on that type of distance. However, because of current line of sight restrictions or the waiver process that it can take to go through to get that authorization to fly beyond visual line of sight, it can make it it's a barrier to use on those longer or larger projects. So where the cost breakover is to acquire that information, it varies by project and location. But if you had a single well pad that you wanted to survey and get aerial photography to look at a diagram or an inventory, probably a UAV may be a better cost option for that. But if you're looking at a 100-mile pipeline you're going to construct, having to sort of leapfrog a field crew, half a mile this way, half a mile that way, and then move down, you're not going to realize the savings that you would get from a manned aircraft. So there's sort of the right tool for the right project, and they cross somewhere in between. So when we talk about having that updated imagery to help us make decisions, in a pipeline routing sense, depending on the area, and I'm just going to kind of slide this slider bar back and forth so you can see the difference there. So 6 months, 8 months since the last publicly available imagery source that's available, a lot can change in an area. And so, you could have a number of well pads or a new subdivision come in. There could be erosion or land loss, or something may have changed in the landscape where you're looking at bringing a pipeline route. And when you're in the desktop environment, understanding what that is can be challenging when you're just sort of working with publicly available sources. And so having that updated aerial imagery to say, okay, this is what it looked like yesterday or last week. And so we know that these are the obstacles that are currently there that are within our route. And so we can better plan where that route's going to go, how many new pipelines are there that we can expect to cross. We can have a better understanding of cost, as we encounter those different obstacles along the way. So we find that using the existing data that's out there and then coupling that data with updated aerial photography and LIDAR in some senses can really provide us a lot of information on the front end of a project to help understand where a route is going to go. So once you sort of have those two, all your data, all that information together, about the landscape that you're routing a pipeline or any linear route through, there's different ways to approach how do you leverage that data. And you could sort of just look at it in a manual sort of way, but there's different tools out there that will allow you to work with that information in a quantitative way. We use RouteNav. It's our own proprietary tool, but there's other tools that are out there that can look at, based on all those different factors, all those different layers of information, what is the number one best route from here to here, given a certain set of factors. And those factors can change, and you can adjust them, to look at a variety of different routes. But gathering information, getting aerial photography, refining that information, and then using that in a geospatial environment to understand and drive a potential pipeline route can be done very, very quickly and on the front end of a project. And it can be done efficiently to sort of, so when you're ready to put boots on the ground, you've already got a lot of information at your fingertips. And we all know things are going to change, once you get out in the field, and in a lot of areas, landowners are driving that route. And so, but you can have a head start with some information, and then use that information throughout that routing cycle to help drive the project, and hopefully save time and cost along the way. So kind of on that same topic, using information using remotely sensed information to help us make decisions and to support our operations. If you have a very congested area or even a long distance, you can acquire high resolution imagery and then extract planimetric features, and that imagery can be controlled, it can be very accurate, and this type of information can help support your survey portion of that project. And so with all those features, the ground crews can just focus on underground utilities and boundary information, things you can't get from the air. But they can, in certain cases, they can increase their daily progress by having this information supplement that groundwork. It exposes those crews to less hazards. They're spending less time in the field, and you're able to acquire this information. And especially if you've already acquired it on the front end of the project to help routing, you can utilize that information throughout a project. So you can sort of double dip on the cost savings as you move through. Another benefit to this approach to sort of help your project is you can do this without survey permission. You're able to fly over and not have to visit that landowner's property if it's an area that you're sort of just looking at. Another portion of that would be acquiring LIDAR elevation. So there's existing LIDAR data that's out there that's been acquired in the USGS 3DEP program. Has acquired a lot of high resolution data that's very accurate. There's survey reports that accompany that information, and that can be utilized in other areas where you need a very specific LIDAR data set, or they don't have the resolution that you need. You're able to acquire a custom data set, but in any case, it can really provide a lot of detail about the surface, the ground surface. So it's penetrating that vegetation, and we're understanding, where are high areas, where are our slopes, where is water going to pool, where are the low areas where it's probably going to be wet and certain months, and we may need additional matting for construction. So we can pull a lot of information, different detailed contours from the elevation source, so that elevation piece, along with our aerial photography to pull out those features, those two things combined can provide us a lot of information to work with throughout the project. Another piece I kind of want to talk about is sort of an emerging trend in the geospatial world and other areas as well, is utilizing AI or artificial intelligence or machine learning algorithms to help us understand what's in a geospatial data set, to extract features and label them and identify them, and that can support us in our operations. So in these two graphics here, you can see that we're able to, the AI, the computer is able to determine what is a car, what is a truck, what is a bicycle, what is a traffic light, and especially with the self-driving cars, the advancement in that technology and those different AI platforms, we're able to utilize that in other areas. In the image on the right side of the screen, that's looking at a bathymetric surface. So it's the bottom of a bay area, and those are all shipwrecks. And so the authors of that study were able to train the AI to go through and find those different features. You're teaching the machine, hey, this is what I want you to see, just like I see it. Here are the patterns to look for. It iterates through a process and then says, okay, I now know what it is. You've taught it how to look for something. And so I feel like for pipeline applications, we're able to use this approach to identify structures. And we can train the AI to go through and say, all right, this is what a structure looks like, and you give it the imagery that you've collected, and it can go through and identify those structures and then trace them and draw a polygon around them. So instead of someone spending time sort of clicking along and counting each one of those structure points, the AI is able to go through and extract that information. And the mileage varies. The more you train the AI, the better it gets at finding those things, and they can get very, very close, in the 90% range and even higher on identifying those structures and drawing them closely. I think the future areas of development here is not only is it a structure, but is it a single-family dwelling or a gas station? Or is it a duplex? Is it a multifamily dwelling? We're able to look at the imagery and identify those things, but if there's a pattern or a difference, you can train the AI to do that as well. So feeding it high-resolution imagery allows us to extract that information. Once we have that information, with the new sort of mega rule of class location, high consequence areas, moderate consequence areas, that's largely driven from the structures and occupancy counts that are along our pipeline right-of-ways. And so that can be a helpful input into that process. That information, so updated aerial photography coupled with structures, and going into feeding that into an algorithm that basically spatially defines what is a high consequence area, what is a moderate consequence area, where are those 4-lane highways that are going to trigger those MCAs, where are the nursing homes, and that'll go through, and then you can run it through a geospatial algorithm that'll pull out that information and identify those things. And then you can go in and look and say, all right, so what is triggering? What's here? What's going on in this area that's causing this class or this HCA or this MCA? So that piece, sort of using remotely sensed data, and then getting an efficiency boost from AI to help us run algorithms to pull out class location and HCA, MCA for integrity management programs, I think can really sort of streamline that process. And the sort of last thing I want to touch on is displaying or utilizing web-based platforms to sort of communicate geographically what's going on in a project. And so whether that's from the very front end of a project, so you're looking at routing, whether you're flying LIDAR and imagery to support survey, and you have survey data, where you have people on the ground capturing pictures, or it's an as-built scenario where you're collecting information about the pipeline, and then all that geographic information when it's kept in a silo is less useful. But when it's made available to project managers and stakeholders in that project through an online interface, it allows people to go in and interact with that day-to-day data, that information, and when presented in an efficient way, that can be very, very, very powerful to help give visibility to a project and understand what's going on, what does the progress look like, and also perform some analysis. So if you've got your joint and heat numbers on your as-built data, and someone wants to go through and search, where is everything from this certain heat number? If all that information's there at someone's fingertips, that allows the users within an organization to access that information. So we found that useful. This example here is just a surface site where there's some as-built information, some pictures, and that level of detail, that's accessible to different folks. So while I'm on the online GIS web-based platform to communicate information, this is more of a current event. So one of the projects I'm looking at that we're working on is processing imagery to support disaster response. And so if this is imagery that we're working with Cameron Parish on that was collected Saturday and Sunday that we've sort of rapidly processed and made available online, so emergency managers can go in and understand where the damage is and what the level of damage is and what roads are blocked off. So it's not necessarily pipeline related for pipeline application, but it just sort of illustrates how we can use aerial imagery to help make decisions and see what is current there. So just sort of a side topic. All right, so that was my sort of high-level look at using geospatial data for pipeline applications. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and be happy to answer them. My contact information is there, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Wesley. Appreciate that. The questions are coming into the chat box. One that jumped off right away was, as you're collecting this data, how long does it take you to process that into something usable?
Yeah, that's a great question, Paul. And so it will depend on the amount of information, and then what is the quality level that we're processing it to, and the amount of QA/QC. But for most pipeline applications, we're able to acquire data, process it, and have it available on an online platform within, I would say, 1 to 2 weeks. In special circumstances where we're sort of in disaster response recovery mode, like the Hurricane Laura example that I discussed, it can be as short as 24 hours, but a little more effort goes into that, and not as much time is spent on the refining the data set.
All right, and then I guess another question coming in is related to the AI that you were talking about. Is that proprietary AI that's being developed, or is that third parties that you go to run the data through?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we utilize a proprietary AI. It's something that we've developed and taught and trained. You can think of it almost like a child that you've shown different things, and the more information you show to it, the smarter it gets, the more it learns. But there are also third-party sources that will take your information, imagery, or imagery that already exists, and extract out that level. So there's it's something, if you have the developers and the folks that sort of work on it, and can work on the programming piece of that, it's something that can be developed in-house. It does take some time and some expertise, but there's also other people are working on that, and it's accessible through third-party sources.
Okay. All right. And then we've got a question coming in from Jeffrey Atkin. It says LIDAR and other GIS technologies in conjunction with existing data layers, how accurate are these in determining soil condition, for example, for the use of matting or the extent of matting needed by area?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's sort of two pieces to that. I think the LIDAR piece, I think the biggest benefit is understanding, where water typically pools, where those lower areas that are slower draining have a very, very, very slow, low slope, sort of in a bottomland type area. And so that in conjunction with wetland information, and soils data that's available, you can use that type of information to look and say, hey, this looks like an area that's, whether it's a wetland or it's an area that's just frequently wet. That's something you can look at. And then also, depending on when you've collected imagery, we've looked at projects where we collect imagery shortly after a rainstorm moved through. Usually the storm moves through, you have a clear day. That's a good day to go out and fly. And you can see puddling in those lower areas. You can see the water that's there. So I think those things sort of in conjunction will sort of help you understand what's going on with the ground.
And another question coming in, obviously what you've talked about today, very applicable to pipelines and putting pipelines down. But are there other markets for this information? I mean, do you have let's say neighborhood developers approaching you for this type of data?
Yeah, that's absolutely. It's any sort of survey or engineering project, or even just a community planning project can benefit from remotely sensed information and bringing that information together to help them, show the existing plan or understand, hey, this is we're going to put a development here, and this is what we need to grade and cut and fill. And we've worked on projects where we're looking at transportation. They're building a new interstate, and we need to understand what that surface looks like. Or in the power market, using LIDAR to understand where vegetation is and looking at line sag and encroachment. So it's using remotely sensed information can really benefit a lot of different areas where we need to understand what's going on the ground.
All right, thank you. We've got another question coming in from Andrea, and I'm sorry if I mess up the last name, Borio. Can you describe the process of sharing data with clients through ArcGIS Online? And then a second question, do you have specific groups / login credentials for the clients?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, that's when you're sharing data through ArcGIS Online or Portal or other platforms. We found that there's generally that overarching project view that sometimes on projects you have multiple different maybe contractors that are working on one larger project, and so the project owner needs to see all the information, but maybe certain groups need to only see their information. And so, utilizing groups so that there's different logins that are going into the same application, but they're able to view different parts of different levels of information. That's definitely something that's good to put in place, and it's something that we utilize on our projects because that can really kind of help. We have internal project managers that maybe want to get on an application and do some editing work on some of the data, but we don't need the construction contractor editing information. And so Separating those types of things can be very, very helpful. Yeah. I guess if you wanted to get more technical, shoot me an email and we can get into the weeds.
All right, I guess another question kind of along the lines of the weeds. It says, it's from Frank Zadel. What are the limitations to getting good topographical data? Does heavy tree cover dimension the accuracy of LIDAR? Yeah,
that's a great question. And it's a topic of discussion sort of in the LIDAR circles, and the LIDAR sensor manufacturers. They're constantly developing better and better LIDAR sensors to do just that, to penetrate vegetation. One way to think about it is if you're in, let's say you're in the middle of the woods, and you look down and or you look up and you see just a little spot of sunshine on the forest floor. That means that there's a hole, there's a space that exists in that canopy for light to shine through and touch that forest floor. So that's what LIDAR is. It's infrared light energy that's being sort of pulsed, millions of pulses that are being shot onto the ground surface at different angles. And a lot of those pulses hit the surface, the surface of the vegetation and get reflected back, and you get an elevation shot on the top. But some of them penetrate through the surface, or at least in a portion of that energy will penetrate through and then reflect off the forest floor and return back to the sensor, and you'll record a detailed elevation measurement on the ground. So it does, if you shot 1 million shots, you may only get back 1,000 of them that are on the ground, or some ratio, but you're still getting back information about the ground surface. And what we found is if you were going to do it conventionally and go in and do a topographic survey of that same area, you might be getting 1 point every 200 feet or so on a 200-foot grid, or even a 50-foot grid. And with LIDAR data that is, shot at 10 points per square meter, and you're getting 1 point per square meter on the forest floor. Yes, it is. Most of the points are not reaching the floor, but you're still getting a better and more detailed picture than you would, with conventional methods. And that's speaking very generally. There's a lot of different sort of nuances to that. One of which would be sugarcane, or certain really dense crops where they block out all of the light. Like you go in there and you would need a flashlight in the middle of a summer day to find your way around somewhere. That's going to be a limitation. So there's a few different things that limit that, but on the whole, it does a pretty good job with penetrating the vegetation.
All right, thank you, Wesley. Then a question from Hank Russer, back on your disaster recovery illustration there you had at the end. He was asking, was Shreveport hit very hard by Laura? Did y'all do any aerial reconnaissance over there?
We didn't fly the Shreveport area. Just anecdotally from folks that I know, it was pretty rough, and most parts of sort of central and western Louisiana, all the way up into Ruston, Louisiana, where HGA's headquarters is. So yeah, I know everybody got some damage, but Cameron and Calcasieu Parish down there really got hit pretty hard.
All right, thank you. And another question from Jeffrey Atkins. This one is quite involved, so fasten your seatbelt there. It says, how much of the cost are composed of customized data sets, for example, air flight and publicly available data, versus the cost of processing interpretations? For example, could data be government-based and free, but all the analysis of that data put it outside the reach of smaller contractors or users trying to improve their operations?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. There's no, well, I would say there's most of the cost goes into the time it takes to process that information. So that human time, right? And I guess there's different, I guess depending on what the service source is. Some people sort of do software as a service model where you have credits to do different types of analysis or things, and other folks are more time and material based. So here's how long it took us to do this analysis, and that more drives the cost. So yeah, but I don't think that after that learning curve they sort of got into, or even working with understanding what the information, what you want your request to be, understanding what you're going to get back. I do think that sort of after the cost benefit analysis goes through for using that technology for most applications, there's going to be more benefit in using that. There's some areas where there's not, but yeah, so I would say it's more on the time spent, and then in conjunction with the work that goes on in the air. Paul, you're on mute if you're talking.
Oh, thank you, Wesley. You've covered all the questions that have come in so far. So if anybody has any questions, please send those in. And while we're waiting a minute or two for any last minute questions, just want to remind everybody, since we are still getting a lot of questions about the scholarship credit, if you missed the announcements at the beginning, we are going to give scholarship credit for this meeting. We will be doing so by matching your email address that was on the registration to your email address on your membership profile. If those two match, you'll get scholarship credit automatically. And please give the membership committee about 2 weeks or so to get all that credit posted. Wesley, I'm not seeing anything else come in, so I do appreciate your time.
Just one other quick question. What's the longest aerial photography run that you've been involved with?
So if we limit it to sort of pipeline, we do some projects that are maybe in the 800-mile range that we'll fly in sort of one chunk, and sometimes we repeat that on an annual basis. When you're looking at supporting operations, doing structure analysis and those things. So yeah, I'd say in that range, and then on the shorter side, we've done 3 mile projects, 5 mile projects. We've done very, very short projects with UAVs, just 2,000 yards or so. So yeah, it kind of varies.
How about LIDAR?
So in previous roles, I've done some LIDAR projects more on the USGS wide area side that or 5 and 6 counties, large. On the pipeline side, usually it's going to be in between 50 and 60 miles. Some of those different connects that we might work on. So yeah.
Okay, thanks. Gary, I think that's got us. And Wes, thank you very much. I appreciate your time today, and certainly you can see his contact information down there. If anybody has anything else that they have a question about for Wes, just give him a shout. And Gary, I think you can take it from here.
Thanks for the questions, guys.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank everybody who participated, and again, just October meeting, October 5th, I believe, Monday. It's going to be another virtual event. Hope to see everybody in November out at the Norris Center. Jim has a good speaker lined up for that. And other than that, stay safe, stay healthy. And we need y'all. We need y'all to be valued members of our society, our organization. Thank you.